maybe you can stick this towards the beginning, Hurin, because maybe not everybody who listens to this episode realizes that Apto Canavalian is in fact modeled after AP Canavan.
You don't say. They're nothing alike.
I'm just saying, not maybe not everybody who listens knows that AP is a real person.
Hello and welcome to Legendary Green Team. I'm your host, Brash Fluster, aka Hurin Fan, and I'm joined today with our very own Celeb, Befuddle Panda,
Hi.
our Calip-Roud Ashman,
Hello, everybody.
and Dan Talk, aka Janath.
Hello.
And we're joined by a very special guest, Apto Canavalian, also known as AP Canavan, or Critical Dragon. AP, thank you for joining us, is what I would have said if we had one.
Oh.
Yeah, so this we're going to be talking about Crackpot Trail, the 5th Bauchelain Korbal Broach novella.
Yeah.
That sounds right, yeah. Or at least the 5th one we're covering. I'm not sure what the published order is, but the 5th sounds right.
The order in the tells it's 5th.
Yeah, I knew that at least. I assume it's the 5th published, and it's also the 5th chronologically. So
This one was published before Dust of Dreams and The Crippled God, seems like.
so maybe it was written after Toll the Hounds, and if so, man, Steve is just batting
Yeah.
1,000.
Because it's in the book where it says also by Steven Erikson, it only lists up to Toll the Hounds.
Wow, damn! I don't know what he was on.
Is that the collected tales, or do you have like the separate story?
It's its own book.
Oh wow!
Not the
So that's
collected
when
one.
that book.
This is
was
a first
published.
edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I want that so badly.
I got it for $7 at a used bookstore.
Wow, lucky you.
I wish our
Lucky
used
you.
bookstores would have Steven Erikson.
I was very surprised that I saw this and the other 3 novellas in a used bookstore.
Do we have any listener questions?
Why should I read the Korbal Broach and Bauchelain stories from Tor? And then Nat asks, what is the spice level?
Spice
Oh.
level very high.
It's hard to say because usually when people are talking about spice level, they're talking about titillation.
Sorry, I shouldn't say very high. I think it's like a spicy jalapeno. So, like a pleasurable amount of spicy. Nothing. It doesn't go over the top.
It's explicit, but there's more like
It's insinuation more than anything.
insinuation. That's the word. Yes.
He's not so crass as to, describe the actual mechanical process. He leaves. It's kind of romantic in that way.
It gets a little mechanical.
I would not say romantic. It's more of he gets the vibe across.
Mm.
That's really what he's looking for.
Especially the lust and the
Yeah. If you're looking for a
Yes.
deep sense of realism, I think is from these sex scenes.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
If you want to feel seen. Actually, there is something I actually wanted to note about the story. I really liked the sections where Flicker was talking about, okay, I'm looking at this person's looking at me. Is there a real sense of connection here, or were we both just imagining each other having sex? Is that really all it is when someone says I feel what you're feeling, or like I connect with you or empathize with you? Is it just
I don't know.
As someone who has never said that, nor felt that, nor been said that by anyone, I can only imagine.
Anybody want to answer Tor's question about why reading these novellas?
They're... I'm editing that out.
If you
No. You have to keep that in.
Nope. It's getting censored, like you said, an F word.
No.
If
fired
you
as editor.
if you felt like in the Book of the Fallen there weren't enough like just really bad stories that kept you like barely interested until you got to the good stuff, then these are for you.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I guess if you want to see another side of Erikson,
Yeah.
That's a
uh
better answer.
see his range, then yes, read these. Or the other thing is if you want to talk about them, these wonderful conversations we've had, if you want to join in, then you should read them.
My answer is yes, you should read them, but start with Crackpot Trail. And if you like it, read the others.
That's, I think,
Really?
fair.
Because there's like references to things
Apparently,
from
like they said, like the word quaint. Like, I was from Quaint.
well, the whole well night stuff and like what happened. Like, I would say maybe read The Healthy Dead and then read this because The Healthy Dead I did enjoy quite a bit, and I think it is a fairly good starting point.
Yeah. Um, y- Worms has a lot of these characters in it, or some of them at least. But you're
Mandarin,
not
yeah.
missing much there. But I think you need at least one Bauchelain and Korbal Broach story first, because
Like where they're
otherwise
actually in it.
there's not there's not a build. There's the whole like premise of like you thinking that they're in the carriage is
That's a good point. It's not
not
always
Yeah.
just
present.
to start with the
I
best
don't
one.
think Memories of Ice is enough to do
Yeah,
that.
that's a good point. I would say okay, Healthy Dead, and then go read this one.
I can agree with that. Yeah, okay,
That's fair.
I changed mine. And the other one, oh, I didn't get my spice level. I'd say 3 sandworms out of 5.
I'm the one that's super into Dune. You made the Dune joke.
Spice, man, spice.
Nat, this you wouldn't like these sex scenes.
I wouldn't.
They're
I
Maybe
don't
she would.
know. I
She
think she
likes
might.
character suffering.
I would, this would probably be the part of the episode where we, separate into spoilers and non-spoilers. But is there any point in this book?
I don't think there's a point. Um,
Yes. Okay. My non-spoiler thing is this is very different stylistically from the previous Bauchelain and Korbal Broach novellas that we've covered so far. And that was a shift that I was not mentally prepared for. And therefore it took me quite a while to get into it. And it's a novella, so it's like 200 pages. And the first like 30, almost 30 pages is character setup, and I am so glad that the rest of the story was not as boring
more character setup.
as the
I
character
was
setup.
laughing through most of the character setup, especially while reading it out loud. I
Yeah,
thought
the
it was
character setup
hilarious.
was the funniest part for me.
Oh my goodness. I barely laughed in this book, guys.
I
Anyway,
could
okay.
not. It's not my favorite part, nor do I think it's the funniest part.
I
But
agree with that.
I uh, I did wake up my son while trying to put him to sleep several times by chuckling. Um, Later parts of the book actually had me crying in tears, but we'll get to that later. I do love
Cool.
the introduction though. Um, Non-spoiler thoughts from our other first-time reader, Ashman.
Yeah, I
Was this your favorite?
of the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach books, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
of
it's not
course it
exactly
is.
facing stiff competition, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty funny. It's not like I've laughed much harder at the Book of the Fallen than I have at this.
Yeah,
But
same.
it was quite funny sometimes, and I was actually more interested in just like the critical themes of like audience, author, the relationships between them. What is an artist actually trying to accomplish? What kind of deep-seated needs are they trying to fulfill when they are creating art in the first place? The tensions therein, the resentment between uh, artist and audience. I thought those were very interesting. I was just kind of like reading. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I haven't thought of that, Steve. And then laughing like just kind of like noting, that's pretty amusing. I like that joke, but rarely actually laughing. Although there were some exceptions.
So I was reading this when we had just finished Dead House Gates. That's when I read it for the first time. So a
Oh.
lot of those
Lucky you.
themes were like kind of hitting on, a lot of things
Oh.
that I had struggled with the first time through the series and that
Mhm.
you hear from other people and things like that. And
Yep.
But also, this was the first Bauchelain novel at the time where I was like, "Oh, this is really good," and like it's actually saying something, and there's substantial things here going on. And I even snuck a flicker question into our interview at the time, if you remember.
Oh
Oh
yeah, I
yes,
do.
that
Yeah.
is that when we got him talking about Crackpot Trail a bit.
Yeah. So, well, and now you guys will understand what his response to my question was about.
Okay, I gotta go back and listen to that. So that was the first interview that we did.
Yeah, I asked him
Okay.
if like this comment by Flickr about art and in the relationship of the artist to the
Oh,
audience was like really how Steve felt, and like was Flickr channeling Steve at the time, and he basically said, "Well, you have to view everything Flickr says with skepticism because he's got other motives." Now you know what those are. Oh, whoop! Cut that out of the spoiler-free part. God, forgot we were spoiler-free. The one spoiler that really matters in the whole book, and I put it in the spoiler.
Well, I'll just say that
Oh,
this
there's two
story.
actually, but
Yeah, I'll just say that this story has been like fine wine, and it just gets better the more time I sit on it. And when I read it first, it was instantly one of my favorite things of Malazan. Like I'd put it right up there with like Toll the Hounds or Carcass, and it's just gotten better on every read.
I'm glad
I
you
love the
feel that
style.
way.
I think it's funnier than all the other ones, including Lee's Lefters and
Oh, funnier than that one.
yeah.
Wow.
And although I think it does have fewer jokes, but the jokes they have are better.
It's longer
Um,
setup for the jokes.
yeah, that's another thing. Like I really like jokes that take a lot longer to set up. I love the style. It's a lot. It's not Steve's normal style, and it's not something he. It's more a simple. Mm, maybe channeling a little bit of Krupp and Toll the Hounds with a very stylized, over the top narration.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I really like the style. I like the voice of Flicker. I like all the characters. Well, except for maybe like Midge and Flea, because they're nothing. But
the
and like it even got me a little emotional at a couple points too.
the audiobook narration adds a lot to it because like I
I don't
didn't
know where you guys found the audiobook.
second collected tales of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach Audible.
Okay.
So the narrator, first of all, the songs were not as ridiculous in my head when I read it the first time, but the narrator really plays up how bad the singing is supposed to be. Really
Okay.
improved the comedy of it. Uh, Second of all, because I've listened to all of them leading up to this, I know the narrator's default narrator voice.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't do that voice for this because the narrator is Flicker. He's in Flicker's voice the whole
Okay.
book unless he's talking from another character's. So it's like really well done. Is really good.
I have a suspicion that if I listen to the audiobook, I would like this more. Um, because it does lend itself well to being read out loud and being more performed
Mhm.
than just reading it on the page.
Hard agree.
Yeah, Stephen AP's singing parts of it was really fun too. Did you watch that?
Oh no, I haven't.
You'll have to watch it afterwards. It's really good.
Okay.
Shall we go to spoiler before I give
Sure,
you anything more to edit out?
might as well. Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of among the best things that Steve has written.
Is there a are we gonna do a summary for this or no?
Sure, I could do. Yeah, we could do a summary. Do you
Okay.
want to do a summary, Panda?
Lots of people tell stories and they eat each other and then things end with reveal.
That's
That's a
good.
very non-spoilery way to put it.
I was actually surprised by how few people were telling stories. It was mostly like Flicker and Brash, Fluster, and Callum
Calip
before you guys.
Roud.
Yeah. Well, they killed two people before the story began too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I was expecting more stories to be told within this story.
hmm
Oh, how many do we got?
So
We got
some people tell stories and others just either listen or judge.
hmm.
The stuff, the story about Draconis. As soon as that came up, I was like, this is instantly Ash's favorite Bauchelain novella because like it's
I'd
the
like the
only one.
Anomendaris.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this is the only one that like really gets in touch with like Malazan lore more deeply because the other ones
Yes.
are kind of like more ignoring most of what goes on in the rest of the Malazan world.
Yes.
And this one like really is like, oh, we have this shared lore, the shared history. Let's talk about the great poets of our world,
Yeah.
and
There's Fisher.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to share something I
Highlighted.
highlighted. I literally have hundreds of highlights. Maybe I shouldn't say hundreds. I have well over 100 highlights. Um, Gods Below Fluster. No. I shall sing my own reworking of an ancient poem, a poem of the famous epic by Fisher Keltath Anomandaris. Apo choked on something, and the host ably brought it upon his back until the spasm passed. Gods Below Fluster snapped Carl around after he starts and does a rhyming version of Anomandaris. The original ain't slave to rhymes, and those ones are just awful. Just sing it as Fisher would and spare us all your version. You're just jealous I'm making Fisher's version accessible to everyone, even children. That's the whole point. It's a tale of betrayal, incest, and murder. What on earth are you doing singing it to children?
I could hear that in AP's voice.
Everything that AP, that Apto says in this, I read in AP's voice, and it sounds exactly like something he would say.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
surprised Steve
well,
wasn't actually meaner to AP.
me too. It's kind of a mean introduction, but
Yeah, that's about
Well,
it.
it's coming in Fiends. I didn't finish Fiends yet. I'll finish it for the podcast, but the parts of it I read are quite mean to AP.
Oh, he's in that one too?
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of these characters are back in Fiends.
It's kind
Oh.
of more of a direct sequel than anything. I guess
Oh.
Lee's is a direct sequel to that first bad one, but Fiends is a sequel to this good one. It's nothing like this though.
It's nothing like this, no.
It's very different. It's like if Worms of Blearmouth was better,
oh,
and even more like D&D, like very specific. Like there are points where the author is like highlighting how much he's talking about D&D and Fiends.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
So what we're on the topic of Brash Fluster. Which of Brash's stories was your favorite?
I liked Anomandaris the best, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thought it was a brave reinterpretation of some of the events of Carcanos.
He has a lot of courage.
Yeah. And finally, accessible to all.
and since
So-
this was before Kark, right? So this is like, I mean, I'm sure Steve knew he was going to write Kark the way he did, but this is like all that you would have known at the time this was
Yeah.
published was like what you find out about in Gardens and Call the Hounds and whatnot about Draconis and Animander's
Well,
relationship.
And I think one of the criticisms people have about Kark, or one of the reasons they don't read the story, is because it's in an inaccessible style, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have an accessible style if you want.
Yes. Dark was the room, deep was the gloom. That was Draconis's tomb. What great rhyming. Dank was
So
the
good.
air, daunting the bier, on which he had laid eyes a stare. The chains not yet broken, for he not yet woken, his vows not yet revoken, his sword still to awaken. Ugh, terrible rhyme. In its scabbard black oaken, cold hands soon to stroken.
But in the audiobook, he's like, cold hands to the stroking.
Oh no.
Like, it's like so high pitched and like bad
'Cause
on
he's
purpose.
doing it in a falsetto.
Yeah,
I
a bad
kind of like
falsetto.
your interpretation of it, Panda. Though, like I feel like this could be like at like a jazz bar or something. Like, people like, oh yeah,
I can do a
groovy
dramatic
cat.
reading. Yeah, I haven't even gotten to the envy and spite part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is better like read aloud. Except the thing is, I find myself not caring about a lot of what's going on. And then the parts where like I'm like, okay, yeah, this is like, Erikson addressing it's probably like really cathartic for him to have written this book. Just being able to air out his grievances and like his rebuttal to the criticism he gets probably all the time. And being able to do it with a veil of oh, but this is a story.
Yeah, it's
But
as
Which like Flickr
Flickr's
does.
story was. Yeah, this is totally
But-
unrelated. Don't worry about it.
but the thing is, like, that's how I read it the first time. And when I asked
Yeah.
him about it, he basically said like, you can't trust a thing that's being said here. So it's like he's almost caricaturing his own rebuttals and like bringing them to a point of elitism that's like beyond what he actually believes. You know what I mean? Like he basically like would not own it when I asked him about it. He was like,
I
"This is not
look,
this is not what I believe."
look. He can say that,
Yeah.
but come on.
No, I he has a small point in that I would hear Flickr say something and I'd be like, I am 100% certain that this is something that Steve just thinks and believes about art and has had in his frustrations with AP or the audience or the critics or whatever have it be. And then later on, we'll find out that like uh, he's like a womanizer and a murderer and just an all-around terrible person and sets up the murders of some of the people in the thing while eating other people. And I think, well, I think you're just making a bad guy say things that you think.
Right. That's what I thought, and he wouldn't own it when I asked him. So I don't know.
I mean, why would he own it?
And
He doesn't
Flickr
have to.
also
It's on the page.
even undermines some of it himself while he's
Yeah.
saying it. Because he'll like say it and then he'll immediately be like, or was it this way? Or I might be lying a little bit. Or like so it's at least self-critically what
Yeah.
Eve is thinking. You know.
Flickr always does it with like a wink to the audience, though. Like,
It's definitely written from personal experience to an extent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it just feels like he was giving himself license to say these things, and then
Yes.
like putting up a veil of deniability, and like perhaps he would earnestly engage with a lot of these criticisms that readers have in a more fair way. But this is him giving himself license to be kind of unfair.
Yes. I
that's a
agree.
good way to put
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that right, exactly.
But you didn't answer my question. What's your favorite Brush Fluster poem?
Who?
Ash answered.
I answered.
All of you.
Who are you
Ash.
asking?
You or Panda, the first person to answer.
Uh, I don't really care.
Okay, what are the options? It's like Gothos' Folly Lullaby version.
There's Knight
There's-
of the Assassin.
Yeah.
There's
Night of,
the
oh yeah, I mean that one turning the entire ending of Dead House Gates into a big poop joke was a pretty bold movement.
Ooh, nice. There's Anamandara's. There's at least one more. I can't think, but
Yeah,
those are the
whatever
ones that
the
stand out.
first one was.
Oh, yeah, the world before kingdoms, and then there was a king.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Oh my god. And then somebody else took that story and like changed all the details.
Is
Yeah.
it when he breaks the lute string and then like everything goes and everyone laughs and he's saved?
Yeah.
he was gonna continue.
And
Yeah.
Flickr saved his life.
Yeah.
And then he later wins Artist of the Century. So good job for him. Yeah.
Okay, do you? I'm taking that cynically, and that like Brash Fluster is just terrible. But what if he actually learned a lot, or he stole some of Flickr's stories?
I think the answer is that the people in the city that they're going to have terrible taste anyways.
That's probably the true one, but I don't know. I think
Like maybe
isn't
this
there-
was a good audience in the story. You know? Better than what they get over there.
Actually, you know what? You're probably right because these people are like more, well, not all of them. Some of them are more aware of the literature that is out there, and so is able to receive and like, I don't know, have more of a refined take on the stories. But here's the thing. I think there's a lot of topics that we could go into quite deep here, but it's very meta, and the whole Malazan books, all of them basically, like they're not written for mass appeal.
No.
And uh the you can kind of see like which of the artists are trying to go for mass appeal and which ones aren't. And the ones where it's like being more somebody actually said this to, I think, Flickr, like, why do you do that? Why do you complicate things? Like, why can't you
Yeah.
just say things more simply and more plainly? And then there was like he has this whole response about it.
Apto Cannavalian says that.
Yeah, there you go. Um, I think that like really well encapsulates like this when you're writing for mass appeal, do tend to need to make things more simple because the audience that you have is much wider. So you go for the least common denominator or whatever, or the lowest common denominator. As opposed to Erikson, I think with Gardens of the Moon, that was more or less the closest we get for writing for mass appeal. And part of
I'd
it
say
has to, yeah.
Memories of Ice, but
Yeah, except I can see that. Um, it- Either one, I would say like Gardens of the Moon a bit more due to its like movie origins. The way that you have to convey visually and succinctly within a certain time frame. I think that really forces you to be more simple. Um, but then the rest of it, it's like Erickson has the luxury of writing what he wants to write and
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily care about like having to appeal to the masses. Because if he did care about appealing to the masses, he would have written something very different.
And maybe he wouldn't have gotten as popular as he did.
Or maybe he would have gotten even more popular.
Maybe he would have got more popular. Who knows? So there's a section I highlighted actually from Ogle Gush when she's when she's frustrated with the story that's being told about the woman. She's like, oh, why didn't if this tribe is starving? Why didn't they turn away this stranger? And then after Cannavalian's like, if that happened, there can be no story, can there? Sure there can. Tell us what she's wearing. I want to know every detail and how she braids her hair and the paint she uses on her face and nipples. And I want to hear how she's in charge of everything and secretly smarter than everyone else, because that's what heroes are, smarter than everyone else. They see clearest of all. They wear truth and honor. Isn't that what you always say, Nifty?
Yes.
Like, this is this is a caricature, right? But there are definitely a lot of people who prefer their narratives to be pretty like on the simpler side, and they want the heroes win on the end, and then like there's like a there are sets of tropes that are, I think, especially present in YA literature, where it's like, yeah, the protagonist, oh yeah, she's secretly special. No one really sees this, and then someone sees this, and then like the story unfolds like that, and that can be a fine way to write.
Well,
But
I mean, it gets to like the reasons, the personal reasons of why people read,
yeah,
or why people consume art of any kind. There's the escapism part, right?
hmm
There's the like wish fulfillment part, which is basically what Algo was getting at. And then there's the like the critical part and the like going deeper and like exploring what it means to be human and all these things. So I mean, I'll be honest, like a lot of times when I read, it's not to get something deeper out of it. It's it's for fun, it's for escapism, it's for
hmm
a good time.
yes, I think the problem comes in when like the narratives that aren't pure escapism are criticized on those grounds, right?
Sure,
As I think they
sure.
often are, right? And people are like, yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously, yeah, going the other way is also problematic.
Oh yeah,
I
if
think,
you look at reviews of any popular book, right? You see the spectrum of like, "Oh my goodness, this was like these characters were so deep." And then others are like, "These characters are so shallow. This world building is so shallow." It's just okay, what is your experience? What are you looking out of getting out of it? Like, are you a more advanced reader? Or are you just looking for a good time, etc.?
Mhm.
so um I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about Erikson not taking into account the masses when he's writing the Book of the Fallen.
Yeah.
And I hear you. There's truth in it, but I think it's only partially true, and there's movement within the Book of the Fallen on that.
Okay.
And here's why I think that. The short answer is because the Book of the Fallen would be written like Harkonnen if he wasn't taking into account the masses when he wrote the Book of the Fallen. So I
Oh my
think
goodness.
that he's like doing like a little of column A, a little of column B. I think the Book of the Fallen is written at a section of the masses that he's trying to persuade. It's actually two sections or more that he's trying to persuade about what fantasy can be. And one of those two sections is readers that are reading fantasy already and either already want it to be something more than it is and are not finding it. People like him, basically, in a way, or are persuadable to the to reading fantasy that is more than what the genre typically is, right? And then that's the first one. And then the second one is people who read literature dismiss fantasy because of the tropes of what it often is, and trying to get them to see like, no, fantasy can be more. And then Karkanis is where he says, I don't care about convincing anyone of anything. I'm writing exactly what I want to write. And
I'm
there's
writing
no
to 63 people.
but I'm not saying I'm not just saying you're wrong, Panda, because
No,
you're
I
absolutely
understand.
right that to a large extent he's just writing what he wants to write, but he's still kind of like reaching out a
Yeah.
hand, you know. And he's not reaching out a hand with Karkanis. He's just like,
I
well, the Book of
think
the Fallen did well, so let me just go for broke and do everything.
your explanation of what he defines it's as what he would define as the masses, I think is spot on. But there is an even greater mass outside of
Yeah,
that. So
You
sure.
know, if we're talking about, mass appeal and Book of the Fallen, I think there would be a lot more readers if they just started with The God Is Not Willing.
Yeah, I agree.
The God Is Not Willing is written in a much more popular style than even Memories of Ice. It's very much
interesting.
feels like a standard fantasy novel.
It's
I've
also
not finished
shorter and has fewer characters.
Can I
it.
read
And
it
like,
now?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
yeah, it's a sequel to the Book of the Fallen.
Okay.
It's more than anything a sequel to House of Chains.
Yeah,
That's
I agree with
true. And so yeah, fewer characters, less dense. In at least so far, I've not finished it like you guys,
that.
but
It's
so far
less dense.
less dense.
Is it a page
And
turner?
you stick with the same characters from chapter to chapter often. Like it's not like it does change, but it's not as like rigidly like we always have to change like scene to scene within a chapter,
Yeah.
chapter to chapter. Like the whole first chapter is like with a certain group of Marines, and it only switches between them, and then in the next chapter you're still with those Marines.
Got
So
it.
like it does change, but it's like much more like focused a lot of the time, where you're not like, oh, and now we're on the other side of the world with a completely different character, and then 3 paragraphs later we're back over here. It's a lot more.
Yeah, and it brings back like the standard, or sorry, like the classic Malazan marine humor, which I think that if he wanted to write for popular appeal, he would make his books much more centered around that.
Yeah.
You asked if this is a purge turner, but Panda, I have no idea what that means for you.
Yeah.
Before you entered, Ash and I were talking about this book, and I was talking about how it's a page turner because I can't put it down and it just flies by.
And then you're like, it was so slow, I couldn't get into it.
Yeah. I mean, it is subjective what a page turner is.
Yeah.
So
But if everything that we described, I agree with the others. If that sounds like a page turner to you, then the answer will be yes.
I mean, if
I
it's got
expect you'll have
Marines in
an
it,
easier time with it than
yeah, if it's
you
got
did.
Marines in it, it's more likely to be a page turner for me.
Oh, better than the Marines is Rant, Carson's kid. It's
I'm gonna read another section that I highlight from this book about with the nature of art. The secret truth is that every artist kneels. Every artist sets head down upon the block of fickle opinion and the judgment of the incapable. To be a living artist is to be driven again and again to explain oneself, to justify every creative decision. Yet to bite down hard on the bit is the only honorable recourse, to my mind at least. Explain nothing, justify even less. Grin at the gallows, dear friends. The artist that lives and the audience that lives while they live are without relevance. Only those still unborn shall post the script of legacy, whether it be forgotten or canonized. The artist and the audience are trapped together in the now, the instant of mood and taste and gnawing unease, and all the blither of fugue that is opinion's facile realm. Make brazen your defiance, and make well nested your home in the alley and doorstep, or if the winds fare you well, in yon estate with entourage in tow, and the drool of adoration to soothe your path through the years.
This is why a lot of things should just be left in the past and stop trying to what's it called, uh, reboot things.
Just let things be said and stand on their own a lot.
And the like yearning and nostalgia and the like wish of it being brought back, that is actually better than having the actual reboot.
A lot of the times, absolutely. Yeah.
Many times, but also like some of the best movies are reboots.
I would also
Fury
like
Road.
The Thing with Kurt
Not
Russell.
watching.
That was a what?
John Carpenter.
Yeah, that's a remake.
Really? I did not
What was
know
the
that.
original one? When was that
It's
one
called
made?
the Thing from Another World. It was made in the 50s.
Oh,
I think
cool.
that is like the only time remake should be done is when like the original is like based on a really good idea, but like based on the technology at the time and the budget and so on, it didn't reach a mass audience and it's only known to like a niche group of people, and like bringing the idea to its full potential. But if it was like
Yeah.
already amazing, it should not be remade.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like they didn't
Like-
need to come back to the Thing 40 years later and make another remake, which they did.
Another thing. Yeah.
But
I agree with everything you said except for only because I think there are probably some other, but I don't want to get into that now.
sure,
But yes, I am almost entirely completely against reboots. Although reboots I think are a different story. But
Well,
go ahead.
I was just gonna go back to the idea of like, okay, so what do we think of the artist being asked to justify their creative decisions seemingly endlessly, right? I can imagine this is extremely frustrating for the author. Obviously, it's nice to have conversations with Steve, right? And we've had, I think, really good interviews when we've asked him about his intentions and whatnot. So I think there is validity to the practice. But I mean, like when it comes to a lot of the things that, like the isolated things that Steve has been criticized for in the Book of the Fallen, like I understand why you would be very frustrated about that. And it's like, it's on the page, guys. Just read the page, and it justifies itself, right?
I think okay, this is my personal view. The intention behind the asking, I think, matters. So if you are like asking him to justify XYZ because you feel like superiority, or like you want to catch him saying something wrong or whatever, or you just want to be mean, like that is from obviously, like, whatever, don't care, like, don't care in answering your questions. But if you're asking out of curiosity and you want to engage with the art on a deeper level, you want to explore the understanding more, right? That is more of a worthwhile engagement.
Mhm.
And that's precisely why I think Steve is so open to talking with fans.
Yeah, and why he was for a long time engaging so heavily in the online community, like YouTube videos, right? Like leaving comments saying Erikson here, or
He still does
whatever
that.
else may be. Oh, he does? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, like obviously, like we challenged him on some things, but I think there was merit to it. Yeah, a lot of the engagement feels like bad faith. Feels like bad faith engagement, and Yeah, I don't. Maybe there's not a good answer for that as the artist. He also wrote the essay, "The Artist as the Living Dead," I think, where he's arguing against the idea of the author truly being dead.
You took my segue.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should definitely link that in the episode description later
I'm
on.
also gonna
I think.
link a YouTube that Mr. London himself commented on. It's an excellent video essay on this story from Dan Explores Books. I would highly recommend it. Just
I have
kind of
not seen
about
that
this
one.
topic. Yeah, I'll send it to you. But yeah, my segue was going to be about the artist must be dead, will be dead, shall be not all but dead, limbs lie still and do not lash back, etc., etc., etc. When they're talking about the critical feasting after eating the artist, which is a quite humorous imagery, I think.
Yeah,
I could not think of the name of it for the longest time. Critical Feasting. I love
Critical
it.
feasting is such a good name.
and then there's Selup later in the story puppeting the head of her favorite artist.
I'm a poet. I say poety things. Do you think that was kind of like fan fiction? They
Maybe.
they kill the artist and then speak with their corpse in puppet mouth. What else? That's the fan's biggest dream, right?
Seems like it.
Earlier, Panda said something like, "You can't cater to every audience, or like some artists have to cater to." That reminds me of in the story when Flicker is in the middle of telling a story and he gets to the sex parts, and I think it was Arpo Relent just gets so disgusted and angry and storms off because of all the filth and the fornication in the story. And then after he leaves, Tiny Enchanter's like, "Oh, here's the good part, the manic mushroom, the," and he has all these euphemisms. And then suddenly
Yes.
Flicker goes into great detail about all the sex in the story.
What he at first tried to like skip it, and they're like, "You can't skip that part."
Yes.
Yeah.
Tiny's
That might
like,
be a
you,
different.
that's the good stuff. Yeah.
I mean, pretty well written sex scenes. I think like this is Steve. I think really flexing his chops in a way that we've never seen before. And I hope we get to see it again. But thus far, I think he's been withholding.
I I think I agree. I think they're actually very well written, but unlike most sex scenes, they're not written to titillate.
Mission failed.
They're
Yeah,
written to. Oh, go ahead.
I was trying to think of what do you call this? Because one, I wouldn't call it smut. Two, I wouldn't call it romance. And it's just sex scenes.
Very graphic ones.
Yes. Graphic sex scenes. That's it. Like,
And not just graphic, like some like really weird stuff. Just stuff
Yeah.
you normally don't read in like smut. I should say.
yeah,
I've read
no,
very
it's
little smut, so I'm not an experienced reader, but I can't imagine like I don't want to repeat it because you know, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I mean, some people could categorize this as bad smut because it would be poorly written smut, actually.
Because it's not titillating.
It, th- yes, but that's the thing is that wasn't meant to be the point.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so
I mean, I guess the question is, was Flicker trying to make it titillating? I don't think so, but
See, I think Flicker likes it
I think he
because
was actually, given who his audience was and what they wanted to hear.
well that time, but the other times like that was inside of one of his stories, right?
Right.
But the other times in our story where he's like, I won't go into details. I'm a gentleman. Oh, screw
and he's
that.
like,
And,
ah,
and then
screw it, yeah.
Oh yeah, well that was him and Relish.
it wasn't just him and Relish. There's another one, yeah.
Per snippet as well. Yeah.
First of it, yeah.
Oh, that's true. But no, that specific one you were talking about was him and Relish. He did not go into detail about him and Per Snippet.
He
Right?
did until she withheld.
Yeah,
He got the rest later.
No, but at the
she put her
end.
finger in his
The
and
actual-
then
No. At the end when
Yeah.
they actually.
gotcha. Okay. Oh, that one, the final. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's quite humorous, of course, like the narrator writing in the most beautiful woman in the world and later having sex with her. It felt very
That's my
Yes.
point. Like that's what I was getting to because I think Flicker actually enjoys those sex scenes and that's why he writes them like that. The one that he just told for the audience, but the other ones that he told us that weren't
Where
necessary
he was
for
experiencing
yeah, when he was
them.
experiencing
Yeah.
like I think he was getting off on that because like to think about the way that he describes women in the story, he's kind of a pervert.
Yeah.
But also, it's not just about. I think he
Also
also just
womanizer.
kind of like enjoys being like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
You know,
Like he's bragging.
Exactly. Right, like
like
he
it's
says
like a
that, like,
brag.
yeah.
Oh.
I mean, he says of per snippet, sculptors struggled to render her likeness in marble and bronze, and then committed suicide. Poets fell so
Uh-huh.
far inside their poems of adoration and worship that they forgot to eat and died at their garrets. Great war leaders tripped and impaled themselves on their own swords in pursuit of her. Priests forswore drink and children. Married men surrendered all caution in their secret escapades. Married women delighted in exposing and then murdering their husbands with ridicule and savage exposés.
Yeah.
It's good.
I I was not expecting these explicit scenes when I
I was so
agreed to
pleased that
read
they
this
arrived.
book. I remember I did say something in one of our Malazan Book of the Fallen episodes about, oh, wouldn't it be fun to see him write something like this? But this is not exactly what I had in mind.
But isn't that how Steve always does? Like, you say, wouldn't it be fun if you did X? And then he's
And
like,
he's like,
oh, I'll give it to
okay,
you, but it won't be how you want it.
yes,
I mean, that's how Karsa Orlong's intro was,
that's
Yeah.
conceived.
it's on point for him.
He
Um,
subverts genre expectations. I think Steve is making doing a little bit of reference to Shakespeare in one of these sections, and also
oh,
just kind of being
really?
friendly with
Tell us
Flicker.
more.
You mean we
Sorry.
need to eat somebody? So said I at this juncture, not because I was especially dense, but speaking in the interest of pith, as no doubt one has no doubt already observed in the tale thus far. Say it plain has always been my motto, which is like
That
that's
was
Polonius from Hamlet, right?
and that was one of his first lines after the introduction too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one. There's another Polonius reference too. I messaged Hurin about it, which is what I thought you were going to talk about. Um, oh yeah. So the when they're listening him to the, when they're like when the critics are like listening to them narrate one of the stories, uh the critics being like the chanters and the other idiots that are there, and they keep like cutting in with their comments, and like it's they're playing the role of Polonius when he's listening to that speech when the players first show up in Hamlet, and
Hmm.
Hamlet asks them to repeat a speech that he had heard them recite before, and they're reciting it, and it's like super epic, and Polonius is like,
Felix
this
is
is too
always
long.
interjecting.
He's like, this is too long. And then Hamlet makes fun of him for being an idiot for saying that it's too long. And then like the at a later juncture in the speech, they say the word moblid, and Polonius is like, moblid tongue, that's good, that's very good. And like that's the exact, it's like almost exactly the same like pattern as that
Good catch.
speech. I can't remember the exact moment, but I was messaging Hurin about it, and yeah, I was like, watch this scene from Branna's Hamlet and then read this.
Amazing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of subtle humor in like that in this.
There's a lot of subtle humor.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of humor that relies on things that happened pages earlier. And not just humor, there's just a lot of things like that. One really good moment that just was not very humorous at all was when we found out was it Arpo Relent who's the murderer? Well, Flicker was going on about not cowards, guilt. And how it was made up some man who's probably a virgin. And he goes on about his really interesting point about guilt and just despicable men. And then later on, we find out from like a confession that one of the wellness knights was actually a murderer who killed his childhood sweetheart because he found her sleeping with somebody else. I really like that
Yeah,
part.
she was ruined. She was unsullied, and now she was sleeping with everybody. Yeah, a devastating takedown of incels.
Um, oh yeah, so I feel like the first time I read this, there was a lot of tension for me about like the eventual reveal that the Dantok was Bauchelain Korbal Broach, and
Yeah,
then
I fell for the bait.
and the second time knowing that it wasn't, I didn't pick up on that tension as much, or like notice it at all.
Did it
Like,
change?
There was like
So do you feel like on your reread, having known what happens at the end, knowing what happens at the end, did that change the story that you read the second time?
yeah, that's what I think. Like I feel like there was like a couple points where I noticed it, but like because I didn't know the first time, I was like constantly waiting and anticipating, and I
Mhm.
like thought that was led more by the text than it was because like normally when you reread, you notice the text trying to lead you toward even if you already know, but like there
Yes.
were so few points where it was brought up and the whole so like a lot of the time was me like projecting my anticipation on it, you know what I mean, like
I get that, and, I know that AP Canavan, like, he talks about this in his episode with, like, Philip Chase and Ruth and Bad. Here's the thing, if you look at the cover of this book, what do you see?
You're the only one with the.
you're the only one with that version of the
Oh my
book.
god. Anyway, it literally says, "A Malazan Tale of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach," okay?
Yeah.
So, I get that, yes, it is the reader projecting onto it, but I have to say, it is set up for you to think exactly that,
Oh,
right?
I know it is.
And the fact that if you told me this was not a Bauchelain and Corbel Broach book, I wouldn't have looked, I wouldn't have thought about Mr. Must and Dan Talk as much,
Right.
but literally because of this what
Oh yeah,
this
no, I mean it's well
series
done.
is.
It's
Yeah.
intentional. I wasn't saying that it wasn't intentional. Like it's framed a certain way. The book wouldn't
Yes,
have as
yes,
much
yes.
tension if you didn't. Uh, yeah. I mean, they are mentioned a lot in the book.
They are
Um,
mentioned quite a bit, although by, like, a different name. Yeah,
Neothani?
yeah.
the Nemoth. Yeah. When did that start? Is that this book that starts, or
This is the
was that
only
brought
time I
up?
remember, but I could be wrong.
I don't even know what that means. Where did that come from?
A nefarious behemoth? I don't know.
I don't know. It's just kinda random.
Nehemothani. I don't know.
Uh, you
Never
guys have
noticed it.
read the next two stories. Does that term come back up?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I'm the only one that's read past this though.
Yep.
Maybe it's because Bauchelain and Korbel Broach is so long to say they came up with their own shorthand.
Mm,
Erikson hadn't heard of shipping by this time, I think. So
No. What would their
necromancer
ship name
behemoth.
be? Like
Bauchelain.
what?
Korbal Broach and Bauchelain. Yeah, Coquelin. You know?
Coquelin? Alright.
Balkle.
Corcoran.
Ah, there we go.
Corbachelin. No. Anyway, whatever.
All the references to like the enemy might be closer than you know. Like
Mm.
Yeah.
that
Be careful
like
who you invite.
it's so
Yeah.
obvious when you're rereading it that he's talking about himself, but like the whole time it seems like nods to the necromancers. Like,
Well,
oh,
because
there's
it
no
also
way.
is.
It was just
Because
an
it
unrelated
is.
story, I think.
It's not
What's
an
that?
unrelated story. It's the story that he made up to have everybody turn on the Dan talk.
No, he clearly said that it did any resemblance to people living or dead is purely coincidental.
Ah, yes.
Of course.
I'm just
No
saying
story tries to actually say anything.
it plays two roles. It's referring to himself, but at the same time, it's making the actors inside the story themselves, go after his target.
Yeah.
He's good at that.
He's very good at
He's
it,
very
like,
full of himself. I
and
guess
and rightfully
justifiably
so, right?
Yeah.
Like he pulled
Yeah.
this whole thing off. It was impressive, and at the same time, he's given really good stories.
And like the whole time, the first time through, when he's talking about how much of a scumbag he is, you think he's just like a womanizing artist, and like you've got like the rogue bard kind of in your head, and then at the end, it's like, oh no, it's just because you're an assassin, like, and you kill people by convincing other people to kill people. Which is we talk a lot about Hannibal Lecter in relation to Bauchelain, but that's actually what Hannibal does most of the time. He very rarely is
Yeah.
literally killing people. Like all the most brilliant Hannibal moments
Okay.
are when he convinces his patients to kill people.
Or he's like the judge from Blood Meridian.
I haven't seen that or read it.
I believe the judge is terrible. Yes.
Yes.
Um, I don't. I'm not saying he's not a bad dude. He's a bad dude. But at the same time, let's look at it. He did save Relish. That was actually a wonderful act of compassion. He freed what's her name, Persnippet, from her self-hatred or search for something more.
Hmm.
He helped Satrap, Stecker. He helped Stecker get his revenge on a woman who was responsible for the death and rapes of children. Yeah, because she sold him to a prostitute. Um, so yeah,
And
the
he
dude's
probably
bad.
got Brash Philuster Artist of the Century, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's number one.
Oh.
Yeah, but that is also in keeping with the character of Hannibal Lecter. If you watch the Amazon Prime show, and I'm sure if you read the books, which I've never been able to get into, uh, a lot of like him convincing his patients to kill people is like therapy, and he's like helping them like resolve inner conflict and like relationship problems and things like that. Like there is that in the Hannibal Lecter character as well. So
Did you say
I mean,
Amazon Prime show?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it
it's an
never was
Amazon Prime
NBC.
show. It's well, maybe originally, but the way you watch it now, it's on Amazon Prime. It's
Yeah.
Mads Mikkelsen
Yep.
as Hannibal, and he's
Hugh
brilliant.
Dancy is Will Graham. It's an excellent
Yeah.
show. And it's
Yeah.
insane that they got away with what they did on network television. I highly recommend it
very
to
good.
anyone who enjoys Bauchelain Korbal Broach.
Even Korbal
It is
Broach?
sad that it got canceled.
Yeah. It's very sad that it got cancelled. Very good cooking scenes.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Makes cannibalism look sexier than ever.
They
Oh.
tricked. I mean, I see why it got canceled though, because they like tricked audiences into watching a completely different show than they started. Like the first season's very like traditional
Just like
serial
crime
killer
drama.
cop
Yeah.
narrative, crime drama, and then it just gets more artsy, more gothic, more gay as it progresses. And it's like completely different by the end. So, it's brilliant, but I understand why people stopped
It's like
watching.
how Erikson like tricks you into thinking you know the Book of the Fallen when you read the first 3 and then
Mm-hmm. Shifts gears.
Right.
Good way to tie this back to Malazan.
If you think the bridge burners are cool, wait till you meet the bone hunters.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I I did not realize, I was watching the episode with AP and Philip and Ruth and Bad, and Ruth and Bad was saying that he is a Bauchelain fan and that there is so little Bauchelain in this book, in this story. And I was like, wow, am I a Bauchelain fan? By that definition, I think I am, and I never thought of myself as a Bauchelain fan. So I
Gotta
had
get the
that
merch now.
realization.
Buckland's a pretty great character.
I mean, when Ruthan says he's a Bauchelain fan, that really underestimates himself, because in other videos that they've done, he's like, Bauchelain is the greatest character Erikson has written, and here's why. Like, he's super into Bauchelain. It's his
he
favorite
loves
character.
Bucklein more than anything. It's true.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm not that level, but I guess I'm a mini Bauchelain fan.
Like it's almost to a point where he's an apologist.
Oh wow. I don't think I'm there. I don't think I'll ever get
Bauchelain,
there.
he's the most interesting character in the Bauchelain Korbal Broach novellas. And then
I
Emancipor Reese
agree.
is a great straight man for him to play off of.
I agree. And
What
I guess
about
he
that's
has
what I
that
was
Brash
sense of
missing.
reprisal.
That
Yeah.
was what I was missing from this, you guys.
I would have been happy
Um,
if he had showed up around the campfire and was talking with Flicker and Apto Cannavalian during the story.
yeah.
I think the ending we got was pretty much perfect. This obviously I joked around at the beginning of the episode that this is not plot focused and it's almost impossible to spoil, but the ending was really cool and set up really well, and the reveal of Flicker and the tying up loose ends of Relish and Persnippet was very satisfying in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also really loved like the end where Bauchelain's just like, these people are insane.
What are they doing?
They're
Pot
in such a
calling
hurry
kettle
that they'd rather
black.
die than wait.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
One thing, have you guys ever read The Adventures of the Princess and Mr. Whiffle by Patrick Rothfuss?
No.
No.
Wait,
never even heard of it.
I think I've heard him read it.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video of him reading it, and he reads it twice, talking about knowing the ending, and then when you reread it, it's another story. That is a
Yeah,
great example.
I agree.
Mm,
That's a good thing to bring up, actually.
okay.
We can link. I'll try to find the video. We can link it.
It's a short video, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a picture book
Yeah.
Oh,
that he reads, and boy, oh boy, is that effective.
um,
On the nature of stories, I have one last thing highlighted I would like to read. Uh, this is Flicker talking. Such is the secret covenant of all stories and songs and poems too, for that matter. With our words we wear 10,000 skins, and with our words we invite you to do the same. We do not ask for your calculation nor your cynicism. We do not ask you how well we are doing. You either choose to be with us word by word, in and out of each and every scene, to breathe as we breathe, to walk as we walk, but above all, Relish, we invite that you feel as we feel. Unless you secretly feel nothing, Persnippet said. Is that what you fear? That my invitation is a deceit? The suspicion alone belongs to a cynic, to be sure. Belongs to the wounded and the scarred, I should think, said Aptocanvalian, or the one whose own faith is dead. In such, said I, no covenant is possible. Perhaps some artists do not feel what they ask others to feel, sir, but I do not count myself among those shameful and shameless wretches. I think this is Erikson being the most sincere, like out of all the digressions of this book. I think this is actually him talking to the audience.
Mm.
yeah, I think there's a lot of that in this story, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like, I think that's a good point. Like, the nature of storytelling is that, okay, as a reader, you have to make that leap. You have to buy into the story, or else why are you even reading in the first place, right? You have to, in some way, approach the story, be willing to approach the story on its own terms, even if you don't necessarily buy into everything. And cynicism is overrated, I think. Uh, leads to worse stories and leads to worse experience of stories.
I mean, I think that's like one of the major benefits of consuming art stories. Honestly, it applies to more than just art. It's just um, how you approach a different perspective,
Mhm.
and being more open to exploring. Okay, can I understand why somebody would view, um, you know, an event in a certain way or a characteristic about somebody in a certain way? Um, and it's all about curiosity. And I think once you as a person like really lose curiosity, it's very easy to become cynical.
Mhm. I agree.
Um, and honestly, like this whole thing has been very much talking about artists, but again, I think it has much broader applications. I was saying like public speaking is performance. It's not just like somebody who paints or somebody who writes a story or somebody who like makes music and sings. There's actually a lot of practicality in what he says that applies to the corporate world. When you're trying to convince somebody of why this problem is important to solve, why this problem is worth solving now, and what are the consequences of not solving that problem, or maybe it's not a problem, it's an opportunity to take advantage of. That requires storytelling. If you're a data analyst, you can do the most amazing analysis of the data, but if you
Mhm.
cannot convey the importance of that insight to somebody, it's like worthless. So there, yeah, there's a lot of practicality.
Shaping narratives are important in every aspect of human interaction.
We
I
could
mean,
create like
it's
an episode
communication.
communication. Yeah,
Yeah.
we could create an episode just splicing together all your career advice in from Malazan Panda.
A mini series. And I honestly, you know what? This is actually really funny. We ourselves, this podcast, what we're doing here, right? We are both quote unquote critics, but we
Mhm.
are also quote unquote artists. I think every person, whenever you put something out there, you are both. because art can be a criticism of something else, right? A response to something else. And therefore you as an artist are becoming the critic. And then somebody else criticizing, judging, consuming your output, right? Is a critic of you as an artist. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that actually.
And
Like,
with social media, this whole influencer culture, like everybody is a critic.
mhm.
It's so easy to just put your thoughts out there. Millions, thousands of people see it. And everybody's fair game.
Mhm.
Anybody and everybody has an opinion and they will tell you about it, right? And so it does take a lot of courage to actually say these things if you care about, what you might get back. But a lot of people will just put things out there anyway, whether or not, albeit, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these criticisms on social media are performative. I think first and
Yeah.
foremost, they're not because they really want to engage with the art. That's because it's like a social thing. I think, um,
Yeah.
and then there is attention. I think for people who do criticism on like on a broader scale or who are more popular. The
Mhm.
tension is okay. Do I want to criticize? Do I want to do the thing that will get me the most views? Like, do I
Right.
want to criticize the latest Fast and Furious movie, or do I want to do like this weird art house thing that literally nobody has ever heard of, and perhaps
Like
like five people
going
might
for
be
the
cool.
mass appeal or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like there's a real tension there as well, and I think, um, like obviously we're not financially dependent on this podcast because
Thank
if we were,
goodness.
we would probably choose different books to read. Yeah, thank goodness, right? Like I don't want this podcast to be very popular in a lot of ways because I don't want to have to deal with like the pushback that inevitably comes from it, right? Like
The
even
the
if you're a loved
variety of
artist,
voices that you
yeah,
then get speaking back to you.
yeah,
Yes.
a lot of
Yes.
which are, yeah, like I'm not going to talk about like criticism of this podcast, which I think has mostly been totally fine and inoffensive. But like a lot of criticisms that people have of artists, they might be loud, they might not be terribly well informed or well thought out or empathetic or whatever it may be, you know?
Well, and I think it's more also of like it becomes attacking the person
Yeah.
as opposed to engaging about the art and engaging about the content.
Yes. Like
So,
like as I think we've all seen criticism of stuff that Steve has written and then saying, okay, he must be misogynist or something, right? Like
right.
we've seen those criticisms, and it's like totally unfair, but it like can often get a lot of views because people buy into drama, the storytelling drama, much more easily than they buy into the, more sober-minded criticism of the series itself. If you make it about the person, it's easier for people to engage with it.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
is a
can
bit
there
of
just
that high that you get. Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
from rage?
What were you gonna say,
um,
Huron?
no, nothing. I was just enjoying hearing you talk. I didn't have much to say. Um, I just wanted to say that I want to ask. I'm probably the only one because I'm the emotional one here. But was anyone else moved by the ending to Relish's story?
Her
I guess
her
that answers it.
believing that she's pregnant, you mean?
No, the way in which
Her being
Flicker,
freed.
yeah, resolves her conflict with her brothers.
I liked it as a storytelling moment. I wasn't really moved per se, but I thought it was well done, and I liked it, like an
I
emotional level.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could also be I was reading this half asleep, so.
I was worried about you.
How late were you up reading? Like till 1 or 2?
Yeah. And we started recording at 7 a.m. my time ish.
Yep.
So, um, I do have to. Okay. My last thought on this is, I really do like the technique of a story within a story.
Mm.
I do like it, and for the most part, it worked for me, in this one. And people have referenced like 1001 Nights, Canterbury Tales, Hyperion, even like The Princess Bride, um, especially the movie, I should say. Um, but if you have not seen Secondhand Lions, go check it out. I think Kieran, you would actually quite enjoy it. It uses the story within a story technique quite well, in my opinion, and it's just a fun, heartwarming story.
I do love
So
nested stories.
This
Secondhand
book.
Lions has
Oh,
Michael
go ahead.
Caine, Robert Duvall, Haley Joel Osment uh, as the main characters. So,
Nice.
I always like Sora from Kingdom Hearts.
Um,
Oh,
this
go
one
ahead.
actually has a story within a story within a story at one point.
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
the Tobukai tells a story, but
Yes.
Right.
he's not in the main story.
Quite meta.
Panda, if you like stories within stories, you should check out The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe.
So good.
I
You
don't think you would
know,
like it.
I don't think so either. But it
To
does some
actually
really
get,
good stories.
I'll give it
yeah,
a try at some point. But yes.
I have a small point I would like to actually make off that. It was just, I think that the way people solicit book recommendations or give book recommendations in the fantasy community is kind of odd because so often it is simply someone listing tropes and then saying, "I would like something with these tropes in it, please."
Uh-huh.
And like if that works for you, that's fair enough. But to me, it seems kind of limiting and also like you can get entirely the wrong recommendations based off of it, right? Because
Hmm.
It happens a
if you
lot.
were,
A lot,
yeah,
a
it
lot.
happens a lot, right? Like, because simply knowing about the existence of a trope within the story is not going to tell you anything about the execution of it, right? So if you say you like a story within a story, I can recommend the Book of the New Sun, but this is nothing like most of the story within a story stories that I know about, and
Mm.
it's weird, and it's the tone is different, and the author is asking you to do different things. I don't
That's
know, like
fair.
I feel like recommendations based on like tone and what the author is trying to accomplish might help people find books they like more,
I agree.
or perhaps get a broader sense of literature rather than just I want only things with this set of tropes in it, right?
Yes. Yes.
I want. Um, I'm. I'm not like other girls. When I'm asking for tropes, I'm generally doing it. I don't know, for like research purposes. I want to compare it with other things and see how they work against each other or how they compare and contrast.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But that's just me.
I mean, that's fair. It all gets back to why you read. What are you
Yeah.
looking to get out of it? But if somebody says like, I really like enemies to lovers, right? That is a nice shorthand to say, okay, give me all the enemies to lovers, and then they can go and look at the
Mhm.
synopsis. They can try a chapter and see if that's gonna land for them or not. But yeah, I mean, in general, like recommendations or even reading reviews, it's almost meaningless unless you have a better sense of like what is this person's baseline?
Mhm.
What are they like referencing when they give this recommendation?
Also, Malazan fits most recommendation queries.
Yeah, yeah. Like a common frustration in some of the places you solicit fantasy recommendations. Oh, everyone is always recommending Malazan or Brandon
I
Sanderson.
want a romance. Here, have you heard of Book of the Fallen?
Have you heard
What
of
the
Mistborn?
heck?
Yeah, like I think it also can be a problem if you're getting really specific about the tropes you're looking for. It's like I want pregnant woman finds a unicorn and they fight an intergalactic
Is that a
empire
trope?
as the Viet Cong, you know?
I don't think that's a trope. I think that's a premise at that point.
I think that is authors looking to see if somebody else has their idea.
That could be
Maybe.
it.
But like, have you guys
Actually,
not seen books like recommendation
Some of them are
solicitations like
really,
this?
really weird.
Like really specific.
okay, you know what? That would actually be a fun episode if we just like either people submit um these these queries to us of like what kinds of books they're looking for, or we
And
go on
we
the
supply
internet
them.
and find them. Yeah. And then and have a chat about them. Can we actually come up with something that really fits uh the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you're looking for found romance and kind of a Beauty and the Beast type situation, I would really recommend The Eye of Argon.
I agree.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. I think there's some caveats with that one, but okay.
No, straight up recommendation. No caveats at all.
It's so good. It's so good.
It makes you think. Noble Savage, like Erikson thinks that he did something with a Noble Savage trope. Mm-mm.
I
Buck blows
really
out of
wish
the
more
water.
people would read Eye of Argon. It's not like it's long,
It's very short.
and we're upfront about how terrible it is. But
You guys did an episode on it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, we did.
and it
Okay.
was
We can link that in the show notes too.
it was so much fun.
If you like brash Philuster, you will like The Eye of Argon.
I personally have not read it myself. I just hear what you guys have said about it.
I think you would roll your eyes out of your skull while reading it.
All right, I'll read it and I'll let you know.
You would actually know if you would enjoy it within the first 3 pages.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
He has a
Yeah.
very strong sense of style in that book.
He doesn't experiment much after that.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what you guys are talking about.
You should read it.
Yeah.
All right, shall we end?
Yeah.
So that has been our discussion on Steven Erikson's Crackpot Trail. Join us next time for the direct sequel, The Fiends of Nightmaria by Steven Erikson. What else do I have to say?
Goodbye. Night.
Okay.
Goodbye.
all of our stuff. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Adios.
All right. Good night, everyone. Goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye. I'm gonna go take a nap.
Idan was in the works for a long time.
Yeah, but like,
But when did he get him on as the editor? Yeah, I don't know actually. Maybe it was after that.
I'm reading the first one,
Oh, nice.
the first Adon book.
Great.
It's
Yeah.
good.
I like
I
that
like it.
series.
I think
Yeah.
the second and third are much better, though.
Yes.
Well, I can only speak for the
Especially the
first third of the first one, but the expectations were high for the writing and the narration, and I think they were surpassed. So
Oh, nice.
oh,
Good.
wow.
I'm happy you're enjoying it.
I wish I felt the same.
I was pretty bummed when so many people in the server were just like, I hate this.
wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like if John Gwynne, J.R.R. Tolkien, and sort of in a little tiny smidgen of Erikson were fused and had a little baby book with like heavy on the John Gwynne.
I'm just saying, not maybe not everybody who listens knows that AP is a real person.
Which is why we wanted him on AP.
I'm sure he has a good reason for
Yeah.
no showing
I've
for us.
been checking my mailbox while we were recording.
Maybe he's just recording with people he finds more interesting and valuable to talk to.
That's probably the most likely explanation. Like Philip.
Yeah, I like Philip.
Probably.
That's fair.
I'd drop me for
Okay.
Philip.